Afternoon again. I just want to cover homeland or homegrown extremism now, obviously, because it's in the news. Actually, one of your questions, but it's also in the news of late, and it's obviously a very important topic that is very relevant because of what happened in Boston. But I just want to cover quickly. What are we talking about? We're talking about people who either born here or emigrated here and are engaged in terrorist activities within the United States. These people have been radicalized. They might have traveled overseas and become radicalized, or they might have what they call self-radicalized. And there's a great article in Newsweek this past week. There have been several incidents of it in the last few years, and it's baffling because the traditional model is that in the United States, the Muslim population is better integrated. That Europe and in Britain and France, they had homegrown problems because their Muslim population was poorly integrated, lower class, treated not in the same way as the more native population, and that's why there's a homegrown problem there. That was a traditional model. That's what we believed for several years, but obviously in the last few years that hasn't proven to be correct. So, again, we've had several incidents. We had the Fort Hood shooter, whether that's terrorism or not. We know he was radicalized in some faction. We had the Times Square bomber, Faisal Shahzad. We had Anwar al-Awlaki, who was killed last year, 2 years ago, in a Predator strike. But he was a U.S. citizen who had been around a mosque here in Northern Virginia, and he was somehow, during the last 10 years, radicalized to actually engage in these attacks against the United States. And then we've had numerous instances of Somalis coming from Minneapolis, going to Kenya, or flying into Kenya, then crossing over to Somalia and participating in Al-Shabaab training, and then coming back to the United States. So that's kind of, we've had that threat. We've had it pretty much spike since about 2008, 2009, and obviously the Boston issue pretty much topped it off. So the question is why? Why has this suddenly popped up in the last couple of years? And there's several theories on this. No one really knows, but there's several theories. One is that they're responding to an anti-Islamic backlash in the United States. Some of you probably remember the controversy with the Ground Zero Mosque. There's been other controversies with mosques and creeping Sharia law in the last couple of years, and people have said that this has been a response to it. And that's partially true. However, there have been anti-Islamic riots and issues in the United States. Not riots, but anti-Islamic sentiment for quite some time. This isn't something new. In fact, it didn't occur. There were significant anti-Islamic movements after 9/11, but there was no immediate homegrown backlash after 9/11. The second reason, you say economics. During an economic crisis, everyone suffers, and that breeds extremism, which is true. When the economy falls, there tend to be more of the extremists, both on the right-wing, left-wing, religious, tend to come out. And that might explain some of it, but if you look at some of the perpetrators of homegrown extremism, Faisal Shahzad, Fort Hood shooter, these people weren't poor. And, they weren't poor, and I can't speak for the Boston folks yet, but the Fort Hood shooter was not only was he not poor, but he supposedly was part of American society, having an advanced degree and being a major in the military. So economics is part of it, but it really can't explain it. And the third thing you'd always say is Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's part of it. If you look at any of the propaganda that's out there, you see it. And some of it has actually done pretty well, if you want to say that. But that is that explains a lot of the homegrown extremism. They see what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're radicalized through communications mediums, and then they go out and do these things. And if you talk to, or if you interview those who have been captured, or you see some of the motivations, Iraq and Afghanistan has been a pretty big issue, and that's kind of a lagging impact. So we invaded Afghanistan in 2001, then Iraq 2003. 4 or 5 years later, then we see this resurgence against the United States for those. Another trouble area for the Somali population is what's going on in Somalia, or at least what happened. Al-Shabaab, although they've been defeated in a lot of respects, there was a civil war in Somalia going on between 2007 to 2011 or so, and a lot of Somalis, particularly those in Somali populations in Nashville and Minneapolis, they actually traveled over there and then traveled back. So they were part of this jihadist movement, but that's actually tamped down a bit with Al-Shabaab being kind of put out on the ropes there. So that's another explanation. One explanation that I personally believe that has been understated is the role of technology. Yes, there was internet in the late 90s and 2000, but only after 2007, 2006, 2007 did we see things like mass YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all those social networking websites that allowed people to become more integrated in jihadist culture. So that was around beforehand, but the advent of the social networks, and you'll see, Anwar Laki had a YouTube page, the YouTube page for the Boston Marathon folks. That had a pretty big way to radicalize people that you would no longer be able to impact. So that's kind of my thoughts. You put your thoughts on the discussion board, and I look forward to it.